Honor, duty, and dedication have been the most common watchwords associated with House Davion, the Federated Sons, and their extremely professional armed forces, the AFFS. When one imagines the soldiers of the Sun and Sword, often they envision what these words bring to life. Men and women of dignity, fighting valiantly against equal or superior opponents and always with a good cause in mind. Battlemechs of this civilizing state will stand tall, victorious and proud against those they must vanquish, who themselves were defeated obviously due to some inherent flaws in their character, or their inability to match the professionalism and heroism of their federated counterparts. But this perception, no matter how extreme it is as an example, does not reflect the grim realities of war. Battles are not simply won by soldiers being professionals, nor are they won due to moral virtues, at least not entirely, anyway. There are a series of key events and decisions that happen well before, all the way through to the actual engagement itself, that will determine the outcome of a conflict. Logistics chains, equipment, and training are all vital to this, but equally so are the roles of subterfuge, disruption, and interdiction. In this piece, we are going to begin to examine the underbelly beneath the armed forces of the Federated Sons in the Dark Age of Battletech, because there is a little-known, dark secret they have kept, and one that would not line up with their carefully cultivated image. Ambushing supply trucks behind enemy lines and slaughtering everyone, killing soldiers sleeping in their barracks, or lurking in the darkness, like a rabid, stalking killer, are not part of the perception that Davion High Command would want to feed to their citizenry when telling of heroic victories against the Capellan Confederation, or the Draconis Combine. In this video, we are going to examine one of the most brutally effective machines ever built, and one with the grim purpose of killing infantry and soft targets. Built by the experienced and well-regarded Taurian enterprises, this mech's official existence was denied for decades, as the stink of its purpose was simply too much to bear. So without further delay, let us investigate this deadly specter, the Scarecrow. All reputations aside, the Federated Sons is a state which exists sandwiched between very embittered and dangerous enemies. While House Davion cannot be said to be innocent by any means in its own behavior, with notably the Capellan Confederation and the Draconis Combine, nor even the Taurian Concordat, it would be naive and insulting to claim that these states did not, at best, have ill intentions towards the Federated Sons, and all that entails. This means that while propaganda within the Federated Sons depicts the state as being virtuous, and above the activities of the untrustworthy Capellan Confederation, truth be told, their own behavior is quite often similar to their most hated enemies. This is not because the people of the Federated Sons are inherently bad, nor does it mean that their leadership is any worse than anyone else's, barring a few exceptions like the recently deceased First Prince Caleb Davion, and some truly heinous figures throughout the long history of the Sons themselves. What this means is that the Federated Sons need to win wars, often against very dedicated and dangerous adversaries. And to win these wars, they will absolutely dive to the same depths of violence, dishonor, and inhumanity if it is necessary to safeguard their interests, or if it is necessary to expand their influence. This truth is why the Scarecrow came into being. An advanced inner sphere 40-ton medium mech, its outline in some ways resembles the old Vulcan Battlemech, a machine of the same weight, and a mech that is often nicknamed the Scarecrow at times as well. Just to be clear though, there is no direct canonical relationship between the two machines as far as I can tell, at least as per the technical readout entries of the Scarecrow. This independently thought of Battlemech would be deliberately designed, from the start, and very deliberately, to be an infiltrator, special operations, and for a lack of better term, war crimes-oriented Battlemech. To achieve its mission goals, it uses some truly impressive technologies, including some of the best that the house itself has to offer, as well as even clan tech grade weaponry. Most notably, it has a chameleon light polarization shield, which allows the mech to conceal itself by giving it an almost predator-like blending ability, and this works against both sensors as well as the naked eye. The first of these notorious beasts would walk out of the Saurian Enterprises facility on Augusta in 1399, over a decade after the end of the Blakest era, into the early portions of the Dark Age. It would be used to completely terrify the enemies of the Federated Suns on a series of secret deployments, being used as a psychological weapon to inflict as much harm on infantry formations and other adjacent assets as possible. It also would be deployed in a defensive role as well, being used to scatter and destroy raiding infantry forces or light ground vehicles used by the Federated Suns' neighbors. These stalking operations often left survivors in a horrible mental state, and created even rumors by locals of ancient predatory beasts hunting people in the wilderness. Decades would pass with these types of clandestine activities, and just simply due to the terrible reputation of the Battlemech, that in theory didn't exist, House Davion and the armed forces of the Federated Suns had to openly deny its existence several times, disavowing that it was in any way related to House Davion. It would not be until 3141 that the mech would be officially recognized by the state, simply due to one of its pilots, as far as I can tell, the only confirmed pilot of the mech in public as well, fighting back against local media organizations in the Federated Suns for complaining about the mech's usage. He started by simply comparing it to the Firestarter, or even a Locust, in terms of its usage, and continued his rebuttal yet further, as quoted here.
What difference does it make if a battalion of Liao infantry is killed by 200 Suris infantry men, or one mech? Does it make it alright if the enemy is killed one at a time? Should we subject more of our sons and daughters to the murder of combat, or design weapons that lessen the cost of war on our own citizens?
Captain Edgar Grantham, speaking with reporters. Planet Almat. Federated Suns. 3141. With this hidden weapon in public, its role remained unchanged, though open knowledge of such a thing would mean that its usage would be, perhaps, less clandestine in nature following this revelation. To the public of the Federated Suns, no matter how this tragedy machine is clad in nobility, it must be said that it would appear to be divisive or unwelcome, if only from the reputation that follows it. This does not stop its deployments all the same. Military necessity will, in most cases, surpass human outrage from the general public, and those cries will be muted when the enemies of the Federated Suns come to their worlds as would-be conquerors. There is often a cruel perception that 40-ton medium mechs are without value, or are at the very least designs that struggle for relevance. The UCU F4 Scarecrow, however, is not such an example of the 40-ton range. This stealthy, smart design can make short work of infantry forces, and can even put the hurt on battlemechs and tanks under the right conditions. It is also built using some incredibly advanced technologies for an inner sphere battlemech, and that is going to shine through in the overview of its features. In other words, this uncommon, spooky mech brings some serious tech with it into the field. When going over its general chassis features, there are an abundance of alterations over standard equipment used by the Scarecrow, even in this new era. To begin with its internal structure, it uses endocomposite. This is done in an attempt to save weight, which it does by saving on 1 ton. But it also doesn't take up nearly as much critical space as inner sphere endosteel internal structures, in regards to critical. Then, as an inversion of saving weight, it has an incredibly important and powerful feature, known as a compact gyro. A compact gyro takes up less space in the center torso, making it much less likely to be knocked out by a through armor critical, or by a standard critical hit to the center torso. This is actually vital in many respects for keeping the UCU in the fight, as a single gyro hit can be so debilitating to a battlemech that it can render them useless. This cushions that potential shortcoming, in other words. Out of its trio of core components involving its base frame, the one point that the F4 doesn't use more advanced materials on is its cockpit. That's right, it uses a standard cockpit on board. Next up, looking at cooling, it has 10 standard double heat sinks. This lets it cool 20 every turn, and that matches its weaponry and overall systems just fine. There's nothing elaborate about this cooling system. It is as straightforward as you can imagine, and doesn't waste any unnecessary tonnage. For onboard electronic systems, the Scarecrow is served by an Akamar Electronics HID-13 tight channel communications package, as well as a Federated Stalker targeting and tracking system, which is further enhanced by a Bloodhound active probe. The active probe is an advanced inner sphere sensor that allows the Bloodhound to get past enemy electronic warfare systems, and is superior to the traditional Beagle active probe of the Clan Invasion and the Star League eras. It is a great counter to stealth armor, as well as null and void systems too. In game terms, within 8 hexes, if you are reliant on stealth, you're going to have a bad time. In the advanced rules for this 40-ton devil, things begin to start showing issues. First, it has the bad reputation quirk, for the reason that it literally has the reputation of a deranged serial killer, and so do the people who pilot it. The social stigma alone is enough to harm the mech in this respect. Next, it has difficult to maintain for the purposes of campaigns, and it makes sense given how much advanced and atypical tech is on board, but also because these machines were a part of specialist formations, and the Davions, I'm sure, wouldn't want to be seen shipping parts around for them. Finally, it has no or minimum arms, which may be its greatest weakness when using the advanced rules. Let's put it this way, don't get knocked over in a UCU F4, as you will be disappointed by the results. Most 40-ton mechs, which are derided so fiercely by so many, often are held with such contempt because of an overinvestment in mobility. Too much tonnage goes into the engine, and the mech is left to sacrifice armor or weaponry to compensate for the loss. The Scarecrow is one machine that breaks this pattern. Now, it's important to point out, the Scarecrow itself doesn't need high-speed maneuverability most of the time, because of its advanced defensive systems. However, it's not totally useless in the realm of mobility. Being powered by a 4.5-ton GM200XL fusion engine, this Crow can reach a maximum speed of 86 km per hour, or 8 movement points in the tabletop game. For the Dark Age, this is not impressive. Even during the Succession Wars, this would have been considered average, and afterwards it would be considered bordering on slow. Truth be told, however, it's fast enough. The reason this pace works is that the mech will be hard to hit at most ranges regardless, but it still needs to use its mobility wisely or it will suffer. It's especially important that it doesn't get sloppy because of its 200XL engine, as if it loses a side torso, the mech will be instantly destroyed for the purposes of battle. The UCU F4 also does have another mode of transit, which is that it has 3 jump jets. These thrusters also allow it to leap up to 90 meters, which is not impressive in mech or vehicle combat at all, but it does give it the ability to outmaneuver most infantry and battle armor. And that is what this feature is really meant to do. It may also help the Scarecrow navigate dense terrain, in order to stalk or annihilate the softer targets it was meant to set ablaze. The most impressive element of this deadly Davion design is in fact how it protects itself. There are several truly important, advanced, and deadly ways it achieves this. The most important of the items it uses on board is its chameleon light polarization shield. The CLPS is an ancient technology originally developed by the Terran hegemony, and one that resurfaced in the later years of the 31st century. So what does it do? Well, firstly, it bends light and warps the vision and data signature for the Battlemech. The mech possessing this is not truly invisible, but it is obscured and blurred to the point where even the naked eye of an infantryman may have trouble noticing a multi-story Battlemech stalking them, especially at night. Operating the machine does have a price though, namely in that it takes up critical space across the mech, but also, when activated, it costs 6 heat per turn to use. This heat load can impact its ability to fight tanks and mechs to some degree, but the benefits are definitely there in-game, because the effect that this has is fantastic. It is 1 harder to hit at the medium range bracket, as well as 2 harder to hit at the long range bracket. The fact that the mech has at least some ability to move as well, even if it's not that fast, means that at medium range it may consistently be 3 more difficult to hit, and at long range, a terrifying factor of 6 harder to hit under ideal conditions. This alone gives the Scarecrow an enormous amount of benefits. But this is not where its defensive journey ends. The main component of the mech's defense, should one actually be able to target and see the Scarecrow, is of course its armored plating. In this respect, the UCU F4 is very well served by 8 tons of standard plating, yielding at 128 points of armor. For its size, this is an excellent volume, and means it can take somewhat of a beating from peer-sized mechs, without being quickly dispatched. For preserving the mech, should its ammunition be hit, it does have a Case 2 system in the right torso, preventing the mech from exploding, and preventing it from potentially losing its side torso, instantly knocking out the machine because of the aforementioned XL engine. This is an excellent safety feature, and gives some extra life to the Scarecrow as a result. Your spooky infantry stalker isn't so spooky after all, if a single lucky hit makes it explode and fall apart. There is one final defensive system on board to enhance its impressive list of protective features, and that is its pair of B-pods. These are anti-battle armor pods, and one is mounted in each leg. These, when activated, will send out explosive scattering shots, but only once, into battle armor when they come into the mech's range. This is the last barrier of defense the Scarecrow has to armored infantry, and it is effective at its intended role. Overall, this deadly machine has an abundance of technology to protect it from destruction. While this will not always be enough, it would be a shocking level of dishonesty to claim that the UCU F4 didn't prioritize this aspect of the armored warfare triangle. It is extremely well guarded for what it is. Very rarely has such a collection of cruel devices been assembled into one mech frame, with the express purpose of causing as much harm to soft-bodied vehicles and bodies. Given its express mission goal, this will make sense, but I think while covering this, I'm going to start with its heavy weaponry first, as this is its primary means of destroying targets of a similar size to itself. It is important to note before delving into this, however, as a quick aside, that the Federated Sons invested substantially in this particular machine given the era of its manufacture, and many of its systems on board are of clan make or clan quality, which makes it extremely dangerous. Situated in 3 locations across the mech, the Scarecrow starts its deadly arsenal with 3 clan quality Exostar Pinnacle ER medium lasers. These functionally hit as hard as Inner Sphere large lasers, and go just as far, in essence, and generate 5 points of heat each. They are an excellent way to hit armor on a tight heat and tonnage budget. Each arm has 1 mounted into it, and the center torso has the 3rd one. Backing these up to hit targets in close, which may be faster, or more difficult to hit for other reasons, it has a pair of Inner Sphere quality Omicron 950 medium pulse lasers, with 1 in each arm. These 5 lasers being used collectively would badly overheat the mech, especially if it's running its chameleon system, and so they are very much meant to be used in a split fire situation, in other words, in some combination of the 2 lasers. Still, it's all about options, and what fits best in the right situation. After this, we get into the main course of, frankly, horror-inducing anti-soft target madness. Let's start with the more colorful of its weaponry, that being its twin Zippo Long Torch ER flamethrowers, with 1 in the head and 1 in the center torso. These do what you might imagine. They cause heat in enemy battlemechs, of course. Okay, the real reason they're there is what you have guessed. They traumatically burn infantry to death, and do so very reliably. They have a range of up to 7 hexes overall, which means they can reach out to further distances than normal flamethrowers, but this does come at the expense of not being quite as devastating as normal flamethrowers. In practice though, I don't think many infantry are going to notice that the flamer burning them to death isn't burning them to death quite as much as the short-range variant, if I'm honest. But this is hardly the only anti-infantry system on board, because there is another devastating collection of killing utensils available to the Scarecrow in its arms as well, in the form of 8 GM ultralight Clantech light machine guns. Much like the ER Flamers, light MGs go further, in this case 6 hexes, but do less damage. Still, having 8 of them makes up for that a little bit. Even better yet, these are arranged into machine gun arrays, in this case into 2 Saurian Bulletstorm machine gun arrays. This means that they will hit in one mass of MG fire, should they hit at all. Overall, these are a devastating tool against infantry, civilians, support staff, unarmored vehicles, and just about anything else that gets in the Scarecrow or the Federated Sun's way. Lurking in the darkness, or even from cover, watching enemy formations moving into place, the Scarecrow prepares for its feast. Platoon after platoon will be massacred before this lithe giant will sprint back to cover, preparing for its next gruesome ambush. Its victims will die in waves of fire and storms of bullets, before simply vanishing once more into the foliage of the world where it hunts. This is the ideal condition for the Scarecrow, and this says nothing of a pair of them simply lurking near enemy logistics centers or mech bays, feasting upon non-combat staff as well. Even if they are caught by tanks or mechs, its chameleon features, combined with its mobility and firepower, may just be enough to see it through to victory regardless. The UCU F4 is one of the most cynical, blood-soaked machines of the 31st and 32nd centuries, and it ironically fights for a house with a reputation, earned or otherwise, of being the more noble warriors of the setting. The Scarecrow was built to do unthinkably bad things to targets not often associated with mech combat. It does this exceptionally well, and achieves this goal almost silently. Even if it gets caught by a mech, it's going to put up a fight, just by the nature of what it is. It's armored, shrouded, meaningfully armed, and mobile enough to do the jobs it was meant to do, and to fight off the forces that might disrupt it. What more could you ask for? Well, beyond perhaps a bit of mercy. The UCU F4 is not a unique variant, however, as the Federated Sons did find another unfortunate use for the chassis. The hobbled Scarecrow, or the UCU F4R, is a late construction variant of the Scarecrow first manufactured in 3122. This war machine was built with an idea at the time of lowering the overall cost of manufacturing for the Scarecrow, and changing its direct battlefield purpose. This was going to be achieved by moving away from its anti-infantry capabilities, and instead attempting to give the Scarecrow the teeth it needed to trade shots with other battlemechs and vehicles. It largely, unfortunately, fails to achieve this because the changes made don't really make the mech more viable due to other limitations on the platform. This, of course, does not mean that it is wholly useless by any means, but it does mean it has to compete for space with much more combat-capable mechs. So, it removes the machine guns, and the arrays for them obviously, as well as the Chameleon light polarization shield. Then, it goes on to install 3 inner sphere medium lasers to enhance the mech's firepower. Why is this a problem? The answer is simply that the mech does not have the heat sinks to use all of these lasers. It's splitting its heat budget either way in combat. It's not mobile enough for its weight, and without the Chameleon light polarization shield, it's going to take fire. While it is well protected for a 40-ton mech, it's not well protected enough to take consistent fire it can't easily avoid. Will it tear through lighter mediums and lights? If it can corner those mechs, probably, though it'll run hotter doing it. Are there machines that are just better at doing this job though? Unfortunately for this Scarecrow, I'd edge the answer towards yes. It's not fast enough for its era to be an effective light hunter, and it's not fast enough or armored enough to punch up easily either. It can still find use if its opponent doesn't respect it, or if it's cleverly positioned to catch the enemy, of course. But often, you'd just be better off with something that does this job better. There's a reason why it earned the nickname Hobbled. There are few machines as terrifying as the Scarecrow to the average infantryman, or to the average support staff member. Many of them didn't even have a name for this vicious killer before 3140, until the public reveal of this slayer of soldiers. One can't help but imagine it lurking through the trees, the world blending and bending around it as it camouflages itself, preparing to attack. Even battlemechs may find this hard to resist if caught unaware. Though it is by no means perfect, and especially in its lesser form, this mech has been a source of nightmares for countless combat veterans, who had to watch as the world itself came alive with fire and steel, closing its jaws around their friends and cohorts, before vanishing into the darkness. It is little wonder that so many consider it to be a dragon, of the most literal sense, even. War is ugly. The Federated Sons have never been beyond fighting ugly conflicts though, in spite of what their propaganda may tell you. But, in the opinion of House Davion, their enemies likely deserve it. They would probably even say, regarding the fate of their counterparts in the Periphery, or the nearby great houses, or even regarding their skirmishes with the Republic of the Sphere, FAFO, or around and find out. Adapt and flourish. A greetings to new citizens of the Federated Sons. Thank you for joining me here today. Well. That was fun, wasn't it? The first things first, I want to thank Chapter Master Valrak for the quote he provided in this video. I was a channel moderator for Valrak and his community for several years before starting my own YouTube channel, and I just have to say I greatly appreciate his help with this video, I also greatly appreciate the help he gave me when I started this channel. A lot of people don't know this, but Valrak was in fact very supportive of me when I was covering 40k at first when I first started to run this channel. And of course, I have talked to him since then, and he has been an incredibly good friend. So if you are looking for 40k content, if you are wondering what the latest leaks from 40k are going to be, I do recommend checking it out. His live streams are also incredibly fun, and even though I no longer really follow 40k in any meaningfully deep way, even I still show up to have a good time. So I recommend that to all of you, if you are bitten by the 40k bug. Beyond this, what's there to say? Well, we've got the Phoenix Hawk 11k down, and now the Scarecrow. Up next is the Shiro, followed by the Malice. We're getting through these one by one. I also want to point out the top post in the comments for this video will be pinned, and it will have a link to the Dark Ages sourcebook, as well as the record sheets for Dark Age, if you would like to look up more on the Scarecrow yourself, or if you would like to field it in-game. You will find these lead to the Catalyst Game Store page. As usual, if you enjoyed, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new here. It does help. Also, a huge thank you to all of the channel members. You guys literally let the magic happen. An important point too is that 4 of these Dark Age mechs that we're going to be covering were voted on by channel members. So this channel and this video were brought to you by viewers, like our members. With all of that, what did you think of the Scarecrow? Let me know in the comments section below, and I'll catch you there.